Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to welcome you here in this session, which is called Transforming Digital Governments, where disruptive innovation meets EU values. My name is Signe Ratso. I'm Deputy Director General of DG Research and Innovation, and I will moderate this session. Before introducing to you our excellent speakers, let me start with a short introduction. Digital technologies are profoundly changing our daily lives, including the way we interact with public administrations. The COVID-19 pandemic has forced governments to prioritize digitalization and has acted as a catalyst for many innovations in public administrations. European public administrations have had significant progress in digitizing public services and transforming interactions with citizens. However, the sudden move towards digital by default has also exposed some vulnerabilities. In March this year, the European Commission revealed its vision for a successful digital transformation of Europe by 2030. The digital compass, about which you heard from Director General Roberto Viola in the plenary session, will be the one which will evolve around cardinal points. And one of these cardinal points is the digitalization of public services. An important ambition for public administrations is in the digital decade is putting users first and to have all key public services digitally available by 2030, whilst safeguarding EU rights and values. User-friendly services will allow citizens of all ages and businesses of all sizes to influence the direction and outcomes of government activities, and to do so more efficiently and also to improve public services. Government as a platform, as a new way of building digital public services, will provide a holistic and easy access to public services, with a seamless interplay of advanced capabilities such as data processing, AI, and virtual reality. As a follow-up to the Digital Decade communication, the Commission has launched a public consultation on the principles to promote and uphold EU values in the digital space. And these will cover, inter alia, the area of human-centric digital public services and administration. The principles will also guide the EU, as well as the member states, in delivering the benefits of digitalization to all citizens, with public contributions feeding into the joint interinstitutional declaration by the end of the year. So, here today in this session, what are now the questions that we are going to discuss? First, how disruptive technologies can contribute to ensure the European citizens and businesses have access to human-centered, transparent, and inclusive public services. And secondly, to draw our future research and innovation needs for achieving the EU's digital government target for the digital decade. Although these challenges may be great, so are the opportunities to turn them into European strengths through human-centered, transparent, and inclusive digital public services. Now, with that, I have the great pleasure to introduce to you our panelists today, the excellent speakers. From Greece, let me welcome Yannis Karalabadis, who is Professor of Digital Governance in the Department of Information and Communication Systems Engineering of the University of Agen. He also serves as head of the Digital Governance Research Center, coordinating policymaking, research and pilot application projects for government and enterprises. From Estonia, I have the pleasure to welcome Nele Leosk, who's Ambassador at Large for Digital Affairs at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Nele is also working on international challenges and opportunities caused by digital technologies and their use at a cross-border level. And thirdly, let me present David Osimo, who's Director of Research at the Lisbon Council. David coordinates research activities related to the data economy, digital government, the future of work, as well as pioneering novel collaborative methods for policy research. David is involved in Co-Val and user-centric cities, Horizon 2020 projects. Co-Val aims to examine the co-creation of value to transform public services and administrative processes, while user-centric cities aims to help cities to move towards user-centric services by providing data and support. This session will not only give the speakers the opportunity to share their view, but also you, as the audience, can join in through Slido pool to help us to explore different issues. Now, I guess that as now we are getting towards the end of this conference, everybody knows how to use the Slido tool. Use hashtag RIDaysEU. And the first question, what I'd like to ask you is, what are the critical principles for European digital transformation during the digital decade? And then you will have a choice to choose from among the different principles. Can I have the Slido? Okay, I think the Slido will start in a minute, and then you can really vote for your principle, for your favorite principle. But now let me start with the first round of questions to our panelists. First, David, you are involved in the Co-Val project, as I already mentioned, which is an Horizon 2020 project exploring value co-creation and user-driven innovation in public services. Now, what role do you see for users, that is, citizens and businesses, in building disruptive innovations? Over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here and to represent and bring some of the findings that Co-Val 12 and the 12 partners of Co-Val have brought to life. Now, the answer is simple. Disruption requires adoption. So no users, no disruption. If you want disruption, you need to engage with users. Now, a lot of focus, and Co-Val has focused a lot on the active role of users. Citizens and business can bring knowledge, can bring feedback, and there are a lot of methodologies to involve them. But what we emphasize is that we don't have to focus only on the active role of users, business, and citizens through meetings, through co-creation session, co-design. Much more important is the implicit role that they can play, so how co-creation and user involvement can happen without actually disturbing or engaging users directly. And what I mean by that is data analysis and studying the behavior of users. This is a less known and less recognized form of co-creation, but is arguably more important and should be adopted much more widely, and not only towards citizens, but also towards business. What is needed is a clear study ex ante of what are the needs and the incentives for citizens and business to take part. I mean, most digital governance platform requires some form of involvement from third parties, for instance, to use digital identity. And also, and much more important, after the service is launched, it is important to closely monitor how users behave, in particular whether they drop out. Digital government does not have a strong track record when it comes to adoption, when it comes to satisfying user needs. So it's a very delicate issue and one we should take seriously. Unfortunately, words like co-creation or user centricities have become very vague, and now everyone claims that is adopting. Actually, in one of the surveys we did in Coval, 80% of innovative public administration in Europe claim to use some form of co-creation. And when you look at user centricity, the concept of user-centric services is everywhere, but not only is everywhere, has been everywhere for the last 15 years as a word. But the reality is that digital government services still struggle when it comes to adoption. So what is the problem there, and what should we act on? I mean, the reality is that we need to better understand, and we need a sort of litmus test of user centricity. And we have a litmus test, and that litmus test is adoption. We should really focus on measuring adoption, on tracking adoption in real time across all projects that are publicly funded. Actually, what we did in Coval, we focused on open data on adoption. We published metamonitor.eu, which gathers adoption data from all existing national dashboards and bring them to life. Because adoption is important, not only in itself. Tracking adoption is important to understand whether digital government works, but even more importantly, when you publish adoption data, this is an incentive, and is arguably the most powerful incentives for public administration to truly center on users. So open data on adoption is one of the keys. And what user centricity aims to do, it aims to measure to what extent cities, which are at the forefront of services to citizens, to what extent cities are delivering user-centric user-centric services. So it's really about, is it truly user-centric? Are these services truly user-centric? How can we move from just saying the word, and because everyone, the category of user centricity is very broad. What does it mean concretely? Can we measure it? And how can we say this service is user-centric? And one of the key variables in this is adoption. And this is actually what we really want to emphasize as a key recommendation, looking forward at the digital compass, services like digital identity, which by the way is included in the Metamonitor, but other flagship projects like Destination Earth, they all are very much emphasizing the notion of involving user, and this is crucial. But we need to make sure that this concept of user-centric becomes a reality.
Well, many thanks, David, for sharing your insights on that. And you really focused on the user centricity. And if we also look at the results of the poll, we can also see that human centricity is the feature, the principle that has received the highest number of votes, followed by security and then innovation and resilience. Later on, we will also ask our speakers to pick one principle and comment further on that. But now it's my pleasure to pass the floor to Yanis, namely with the lessons learned from COVID-19. What are the main research and innovation trends and emerging technologies that we should keep an eye on to support a value-based European digital transformation and keep citizens and businesses at the center? Now, Yanis, over to you.
Thank you, Signe. Yes, we all know, we all understood, and many of us also have written that COVID did more than all of us for digital transformation. So what does the pandemic leaves, hopefully getting away? The first thing I see is that we are all convinced now that the paper is dead. So this is something we have been struggling in our community for a long time to make the public sector understand that we can work without paper. Now, nobody wants to handle paper anymore. You don't want to have cash, you don't have to even touch paper in the transactions. So this is one main thing that we need to have in mind. And then when someone is dead, we have a new king sometimes. So the smartphone is the king now. not an ordinary phone. Nobody ever will start again phoning into call centers. We will see all that gradually getting away. There will be no PCs even no TV, certainly not a desk that can do the job. So this principle of having the mobile as the first device for all the interaction between the government and the citizen and the businesses also, I think is the second thing that we need to have in mind. Now, concerning the technologies now that you asked, we saw a lot changing in education where I also come from. Now, we know that you don't have to move anymore in order to learn. And this brought a lot of new developments into education. Within a year and a half now, we managed to turn our ordinary stuff to quite new things. We now mix visualization, we mix even augmented reality and virtual reality with our teaching. And this will evolve further. And of course, another major shift was on remote working technologies. Now, you can work from anywhere. So all the technologies that make that happen will stay here for the years to come and gradually, or faster than gradually, transform really the public sectors in Europe and beyond. Of course, we don't forget, the three sisters, as we start calling them, which is artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and blockchain. That's, these technologies, irrespective of the pandemic, up to now, of course, they showed their power during the pandemic, but irrespective of that, they will play a major role in the years to come. And I would like to close with something that is a little bit technological, but also not. What we learned during the pandemic is that first, experts sometimes know what they say, so we should listen to them. And the second thing is that, which is very important also for the public administration, is that the law can change. And sometimes this can be done very fast when needed. So this will be a barrier less to digital transformation. And finally, of course, that we should all do something for our state and not just waiting for the state to do something for us. So I'm coming back to what David said about user centricity. And with this, I think I will stop here. Thank you.
Well, many thanks, Yanis. With your first remark, you really made me feel ashamed, as I still have a paper at hand. But that's true, that when we work from home, then we don't need papers anymore. But certainly, in order to make that happen, we should have the digital possibilities to interact and to communicate. And now I'd like to give the floor to Nele. Nele, you come from Estonia, which we know as a country that is among Europe's frontrunners in public sector digitalization. By the way, I'm an Estonian citizen myself, and I've had the pleasure to enjoy Estonian e-government services already for the last 20 years. But particularly for the last 15 years that I've been living here in Brussels, I've really seen the real advantages. I can vote in elections online. It takes me a few clicks, just 3 minutes. The same goes, for instance, for signing your annual tax declarations. And I'm saying signing because they are already pre-prepared for you. So you don't need even to take the trouble of preparing them. But these are just a couple of very simple examples. But what I'd like to ask you is namely what have been the main enablers for a successful digital transformation in Estonia? And how did research and innovation contribute? And what are now Estonia's main technological priorities for the digital decade? Has everything already been done? Is there still something to be done further? Over to you, Nele.
Thank you very much, and hello from Tallinn. And I'm really glad to say hello to Yanis and David, and also to the moderator, whom we have worked together in the Ministry of Economic Affairs some long time ago. But looking back and looking forward, I understand is what I need to cover here. And I would perhaps start that often people ask from Estonia, so what is your digitalization system, or what is your digital governance model? And I believe that when we started, we actually didn't have any. So we did not have one single system that we were trying to develop, or one model that we were trying to work out and make sure that everybody would follow. And I'm glad that we did not, because in this way we would not have guaranteed a success, but it would have been very costly and very time consuming. So what was done in Estonia actually was to let public sector do their thing, but they were centrally supported whenever somebody was into digitalization, and provided this sort of the right skills, the right tools, and the right regulations that I would like to actually come back to when we talk about the future of digitalization. But of course now, when I look back at this 20 years plus development, I can see that there were definitely some key aspects or some key important milestones in our development. And of course, the first one is related to data. We very quickly managed to put down principles for data governance and management, and also standards. And that also includes interoperability. And this takes me to the second aspect, and this is actually digital identity that we talk also now a lot also in Europe. And together with interoperability, these are the main principles in all these documents that we have been mentioning. But when I look at, for example, what is happening in practice, I can still see that, yes, data is being collecting digitally, the data governance or management structure is in place. But now when we start to look at the interoperability, we can see that there are still some issues, and largely because this data is not connected to a person's digital identity. So it is not really only a matter of one or two great initiatives or one or two agencies. It is really truly a collective, whole governmental sort of exercise and effort to make data governance work that is sort of a base for user-friendly and seamless government that we have also been talking here today. But the third aspect, and I'm glad that this was also brought out by our audience as one of the main principles, and this has got to do with security. And here we can relate a little bit the guaranteeing or organizing the cybersecurity in Estonia to how the digitalization has been organized or managed, because it was a very deliberate decision to offer central crucial components to all governments in Estonia centrally. And this was done precisely in order to guarantee security, so that perhaps those local municipalities or other organizations that would not have a very high digital capacity would not have to develop their own systems for data exchange or identity and so forth. But these were provided to both government, but also to private sector centrally. And the last one that I would like to end here, when I look at the past and where I see actually the future, and this is sort of the reason also why the digital diplomacy, I guess, is higher in the agenda than ever before. And this has got to do with skills and capabilities. We talk a lot about digital capabilities. Not often we know what do these mean. Does this mean education in IT? Does it mean good math students? Does it mean more women in IT and math? So here I believe we have a lot to think about when we talk about digital capabilities in public sector, but also in the public and private sector. But in the past, this was heavily influenced Estonian digitalization. Estonian government, together with the private sector, really took responsibility for educating the public and educating the public for free. Combining this with practical use and knowledge about government services, and how to use them. So with this note, combining the past and the challenges of the future that we will talk about later today, I would also like to end. But when we look at our main, I would say, undertaking now in Estonia, I believe it is actually related still to rethinking public service delivery. And we have seen this happening over the past 10 years, that we are trying to understand what are these live event-based services, how do people see public services, when do they need these services, where do they need these services, how much they want these services to be automated, and how much they do not want that automation. So these are these questions that, of course, relate also, like Janis said, let's say, to the use of artificial intelligence. So these, I would say, are the main ways or forwards that we are currently working here in Estonia. So thank you very much.
Well, many thanks, Nele, for sharing your experiences and thoughts, the success factors in the past, but also in the future. And as I picked up, really putting the needs of the people at the center is really key in order to see what are, namely, the services that are needed for the people and what is the best way how to organize them. Now, let's now go to the second round of questions. So I'd like to now put the second question to David, namely, is there anything we would have done to do more to ensure respect of EU rights and values in building disruptive innovations?
Well, thanks for that. I think when we talk about values, we can talk about many things, but one value I think is very important when it comes to government is trust. And I'm not talking about trust in government, I'm really talking about trust in the society. And we have realized during the pandemic how important it is to have this kind of infrastructure in place to make sure that our society do not break up even under the pressure of a pandemic. And I think government have a major role to play in trust when it comes to building trust. Now, how? I think a couple of things, also referring to what my excellent panelist colleague have said before. First, trust is gained through delivery. Government must deliver, especially when it comes to digital project. This has not always been the case. We cannot go on promising the same things over and over again. We need to deliver, and delivery builds trust not only by citizens, but also by all the other players in the ecosystem who need to invest in a new identity standard, in a new data format, in a new solution, standard solution, like in business, for business reporting. So delivery is crucial. Second point, and this is boring, data quality. Trust is built by, among other things, by a shared understanding of reality. And government have a major role to play when it comes to ensuring the high quality of data. For instance, when it comes to the pandemic, we had troubles even counting the dead during the pandemic. We need government to continue investing in improving the data quality and in making sure that these high quality data are shared not only internally, but throughout all institutional level with the private sector, taking into account appropriate safeguards, and with citizens. Citizens must be equally in control of this data. And that's my further point, very special claim. I think we should not exempt government from the obligation that every business have. If every business, as a former colleague of mine, Lucas Ilves, you said, has to ensure data portability, government need to do this too. It's not possible the government has an exception to GDPR for this. And finally, last but not least, related to all of this, I just want to reiterate the point I did before. Open adoption data open up the data about the adoption. If we want trust in government, and if we want companies to trust that, for instance, the next e-identity is the right solution to invest on, we need to be transparent about adoption data, because government, as the Digital Compass says, government is a platform. So if we want to gain, for instance, if we want business to invest in digital identity, we need to show that actually citizens are using this digital identity. So adoption data are crucial. And I think referring to Estonia, a last point is an ecosystem approach. We don't have to work inside, especially when it comes to data flows, as I said before. Government can really help and play a leading role in when it comes to data governance. In Estonia, X-Road, the famous data sharing platform internal to the public administration, allows citizens to see who actually has accessed the data, but also is now expanding, involving private sector players who, with appropriate control, can access the data to deliver value-added services. And I think this ecosystem approach, which takes into account not only the silos of government, but actually how data flow, how services are erogated by different players to citizens, is necessary to reinforce the quality of services, to ensure that the services are up and running also during the crisis, and to build trust between citizens and business.
Well, many thanks, David, for underlining the trust issue. And really, as a citizen, you can be sure that you can check or say who has looked at your data, then you can also trust the government services. So that's really a key issue. Now over to Yanis. In what way do you think can these innovations and emerging technologies support us to achieve digital decade objectives on digital government?
How far do you want to travel today? Now,
just a couple of minutes. Unfortunately, not more.
Yeah, even in 2 minutes, we can go to Mars and come back. Now, first, let me tell you that I think that digital decade objectives will be easily surpassed within the next 8 to 10 years. I give you 2 examples. We say 100% of the key services to be online. Why not all the services? I have been working with this idea of digital public service provision to be only online. Of course, not the garbage collection, but all the administrative processes to be fully online. I think we will manage that. Now, also we will manage access to much more than the medical records, because there are more than 500 different registries that the state has for us. But let's go now into the technologies and give you a couple of examples of how will it be. As I said before, the 3 sisters. So artificial intelligence, I think this is the biggest tool we have. And of course, we need to take care, as we do with every knife we play, or with every spoon, or even with every gun sometimes. We need to have some care on how we utilize, but the potential is tremendous. I think we will manage to do things. The most important, I say to my students, is we will move from human time into machine time. So by counting the service delivery into hours and days, AI will give us the chance to do it by counting in milliseconds. Imagine to get your permit for a new house that today, even in Europe, takes a little bit more than a couple of days sometimes, to be done instantly. Because we can automate this decision making. And of course, there will be difficult decisions that it's better not to have the machine take them, or at least not yet, because we need the collective power of the human intelligence. But even in those cases, machines can assist us by supporting those decisions and doing all the preliminary work that takes all this time to a court or to a judge, make a decision in a couple of months sometimes. Now, a next big thing, I think, will be the way that citizens will dive into more and more into devices, so Internet of Things and 5, 6G already. It's coming. We already study the next generation, and we haven't deployed this generation. This is why I tell you, even the digital decade objectives we have today, I think will be easily overpassed. Now, with IoT and 5G technologies, we will have this ability to make the citizens, if we want, a part of the government. Every citizen with his own device can be a part of a global interconnected system that generates a lot of data. Then we can do a lot of things. Depends on how far we want to go, because we don't want to be in a society that all these facilities and all these abilities and all this data, of course, are taken care or are being adopted, let's say, or managed by the wrong people or by people with the wrong things in their minds. So we need an ethics framework to manage all these ideas. Last, I will go to what was said before from Estonia by Nele on interoperability. Interoperability is something I have been studying for the last 20 years. It's here all the time. Now we need to understand that in order to achieve what we want, which is basically the government to be represented in full by every employee, by every system, by every unit, that you will not go anymore into an interaction with a government employee and tells you, yeah, it's not me, it's somebody else. In order to achieve this, so that we have this full operation as a whole, we need, of course, always to tackle interoperability. And we know that interoperability can only be tackled by design. So before we start, now we try, even in Greece now, we try to make interoperable all the old systems. It's not going to go like that. And finishing, I would like to say something which is not directly technological, but we should understand something, that we should start inventing, experimenting, and designing new services. You see, digitalization of services that have been designed or invented a few hundred years ago is not what we need technology for. Technology is here to make possible new services that can only be done through technological means. So we need at the point to stop reinventing the wheel and making better services that have been designed in the 1600s, and start thinking what, let's say, the extraterrestrial, this is a very nice example, would do if they had all these facilities that we have today by designing from scratch. How would garbage collection would then look? Thank you.
Well, many, many thanks. I particularly liked your idea that everybody of us can be part of the government, and also that you highlighted the importance of interoperability. I think just to give a very simple example that everybody would understand is that now, in order to open up EU borders for travel and tourism, interoperability of our vaccination passport is key. This has been designed in order to be interoperable. Now we also need to see that all the governments will recognize it as such. This gives me a good opportunity now to continue with Nele and with the second question. Now, you've already mentioned that we'd like to have all key public services to be online by 2030. What do you see as the major enablers and barriers for the national governments in order to do so? And what is also the role of research and innovation there?
Thank you very much. I would like to start with a positive note, and also agreeing with the panelists that actually we are not so far from having the services online. I believe it is mainly about improving these services with the help of these technologies that are available to us and that really develop in an incredibly fast speed. And this is exactly where I would like to start. And it is got to do with our knowledge, our skills, and our capabilities to understand these fast technological changes and to guarantee that we actually know how to use these technologies to do better what we have to do as governments or public or private sector. So Estonia has never been inventing any technology. We have been very smart in using these technologies that have been invented somewhere else. But at the same time, we have to also understand that these developments are much faster, they are global. And I believe one of the challenges and one of the barriers actually is related to these skills and capabilities of understanding these technologies and using them. One reason is that these technological developments are not taking place in our countries, especially when we talk about artificial intelligence that we have so many hopes for. But we do understand that these developments take place where there is, in these countries where there is a lot of data and it is related to the size of the country. So here we can see that this international collaboration and we would say even, let's say, a European concern that these developments are increasingly not in Europe has put these technologies also high in international agenda. And I believe that here we as Europeans have to come together and do quite a bit. But the second part of these digital capabilities is actually what I also referred to in the first half of our discussion today, is understanding what these digital capabilities are. We do not have a lack of IT students. There are plenty of IT students, programmers. At the same time, we have a lack of data scientists. We have a lack of information system managers, operators, and so on and so on. So it seems to me we really need to rethink how to educate our people, but also our employees to be able to use these technologies and what these technologies offer. But we haven't talked a lot about where the research and innovation comes in, and I believe it comes in exactly here. Because often these skills and capabilities are not in public sector. These capabilities are increasingly in academia, and we have seen really some great examples of cooperation between academia, private sector, and the government, and especially in the COVID pandemic. And there are some good examples from the social care, how to combine a big data research and the provisioning of social benefits and healthcare. So I believe that this is that here academia and research will have an increasingly essential role. But coming back to barriers, where I also see that we need to discuss more than it has been done until now, is about actually the intersection between regulations and technologies. And some of these regulations that we have perhaps put in place, keeping in mind these technological developments, are by now, they have lived their life and they need to be renewed. And there needs to be a discussion about this in our society. And of course, we all talk about the balance between, let's say, privacy regulations and innovation and improving digital service delivery, especially in COVID times in the health sector, for example. So here, with this emerging trend of big data and AI, I believe that we will have quite a bit of hard time in making sure that regulation supports the use and the good use of the technologies.
Many thanks, Nele. Many thanks to all speakers. Unfortunately, it has been a very lively discussion among the panelists, and we won't have any time to get back to the questions of the audience. Let me very quickly also conclude that we've acknowledged that digital transformation of governments and human-centric digital public services are critical, and also that EU rights values should be safeguarded both online and offline. And the outcomes of these sessions will also feed into the ongoing consultations. Thank you very much, all the panelists. Thanks for the audience.